Hey everybody, this is Dustin with www.gamblingonfreedom.com. I am a certified hypnotherapist who specializes in problem gambling, compulsive gambling, gambling addiction. And in today's video, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the gambling addiction didn't start because of money. It doesn't start because of money. You're not chasing money in the beginning of the addiction. Okay. So where does it start? If it doesn't start with the money, where does it start? Well, it starts with pain versus pleasure. Now, this is a principle of the subconscious mind that I talk about pretty extensively on my channel. You can definitely take a look at those videos if you'd like some more in-depth information, but I think I'm going to cover it pretty good here too. So, pain versus pleasure. Now, this is not as easy as it sounds sometimes. This is a principle in the subconscious mind, but it isn't as easy as it sounds. And I'll give you a reason and example why. So, you would think that a person who has a gambling addiction, they are, let's just say they have this gambling addiction and it's not going well, right? They're deep in it. It's hard, it's painful. They, spend their entire paycheck on gambling. Now they have no money for food or for bills. They lose their car from repossession. Their wife is getting really upset with them that they're wasting all their money. They're taking their kids' college funds to go gamble. They're losing their house, whatever, right? They lose everything, and yet they're still gambling. You would think that a person who's losing their entire life, everything they've ever worked for, would just be like, yeah, this is a lot of pain. I'm not staying here. I'm going to go towards pleasure. That would make sense, right? And the pleasure would be to stop gambling. But that's not how it works. Unfortunately, that is a logical way of looking at it. Okay. So you have your conscious mind, which is very logical. And this is a logical statement. Logically, it makes sense that I feel this pain and I don't like it. And I'm going to run away from the pain of losing all my money and losing my wife and losing my kids and losing my house and losing my car and losing my career and losing everything I worked for. Logically, it makes sense. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to run away and go towards something else, such as quitting gambling. That would be a pain versus pleasure at the conscious level, a logical level. But at the subconscious level, which is where the pain versus pleasure principle actually governs and lives, uh, that's not actually what it is, because here's the problem. All right. So what happens is, think about it like steroids. Okay. Let's say you have this natural testosterone level. This is your natural base, your natural testosterone base. And you introduce a steroid. And this steroid raises your testosterone level synthetically up to here. Well, what happens is your body, your unconscious, is very, very smart. And it knows that this level of testosterone, even though it's synthetic, is way too much. So what does it do? It lowers your natural level of production of testosterone, lowers your natural production of testosterone down here. So your free testosterone drops down here while you're on synthetic steroids because they're up here, right? So it raises your testosterone levels, your natural testosterone levels drop. So what happens when you come off of the testosterone, synthetic testosterone, synthetic steroids? What happens is your levels stay down here because this is just all fake. This is all faux testosterone. And so your levels are now lowered naturally because you had too much in your system. And so what happens is now you have to take a PCT, which is post-cycle therapy. Basically, it means that you are taking supplements now to raise your natural testosterone back to base level so that you could then take steroids again and do the whole thing all over again. This is the exact same thing. Okay, so what's happening is you go gamble. It's fun. It's exciting. You're making lots of money. You're winning sometimes, right? And you have all this dopamine just sparking, all this fun, all this excitement, all these feel good chemicals, all this reward happening, all this good stuff is happening. And what happens is when you do this enough and prolonged, your dopamine receptors essentially are fried. They're fried. And so what happens is life now doesn't feel good. Okay, life doesn't feel good anymore. You can't, your dopamine levels are here because you've been, let's just say your dopamine levels are here. You go, you gamble, and now they're up here because of all the fun, the excitement, and the money, and blah 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 blah. And you have all of this dopamine here, and then now when you are not gambling, all that faux dopamine, if you will, all of that just fades, and now you have life at the regular baseline level of dopamine, and it's not fun anymore. Life becomes boring. Okay, life becomes boring, it becomes monotonous, there's no real fulfillment anymore. So what happens is, this person who's a gambling addict, logically it makes sense that they should move away from the pain of whatever they're doing to get out of gambling and not gamble anymore, which would logically be the pleasure. But that's not how it works in the subconscious mind. Yes, this is painful and that hurts and there's emotional pain, and this is where you find that people are like, okay, I'm going to move away from this. I'm never going to gamble again. And they stop gambling, and they stop gambling for a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. And then they go back to gambling. This is the relapse, because what happens is they stop gambling. They force themselves to stop gambling. They use that discipline and that willpower to force themselves to stop gambling. But life doesn't feel good anymore. Life doesn't feel good anymore. Friendships don't feel the same. Relationships don't feel the same. On top of them not feeling the same, feeling a little bit more boring, a little bit more monotonous, because the dopamine levels are now down. But on top of that, you've also broken promises. You've also hurt people and things like that, and so that gets mixed into that. So this, having no fulfillment in life, no feelings of excitement, no feelings of love and gratitude and appreciation for where you are and who you are and your wife and your kids, and all of that. The pain is actually here, not here. So logically, it makes sense that all this stuff is more painful, that I've wasted my paycheck, I've broken those promises, I've hurt people. Emotionally, I feel really guilty and ashamed of doing those things and hurt. And so it makes sense logically that we move away from that towards the pleasure of not gambling. But in reality, in the subconscious mind, it's the exact opposite, because what happens is it's far more painful to live a life with no fun, no excitement, no there's nothing happy there. There's no fulfillment. There's no desire. There's no purpose. Nothing. All of that gets taken away because the dopamine is so high when you gamble. So all the receptors just fried, and now you have a life that's mundane, and you can only live in that for so long until that becomes far more painful. So to the subconscious mind, it already knows this is way more painful than not than actually gambling. In fact, gambling feels good. So what happens is this becomes the thing that you now move away from, going towards the pleasure. So logically, it would make sense the opposite, but at the subconscious level, it's almost always a paradox, and it's actually the other way around. So it's not that you're chasing money. You're moving away from pain. You're going towards pleasure. The money is pleasurable. And so, yes, you are chasing the money, but you're not doing it for the reasons that you think you're doing it. And that's not how it starts. When a gambling addiction starts, okay, just think of this scenario for a second. Gambling addiction starts. I'm the gambler, and I have no problem gambling, no problem whatsoever. I've gambled a few times here and there. I've always been able to just take $20 in, lose it, and walk away. Right? Let's just say that's the case. And let's say I'm at work and my boss is yelling at me. I feel like I might get fired soon. I start getting stressed the heck out. I don't like my job. It's not where I want to be in life. I come home to some screaming kids who are unappreciative and ungrateful, and a wife who nags me. Right? And I have all this sort of emotional pain that's just kind of everyday life pain, right? And I lived with that for 5 years, 10 years, and everything's fine, everything's okay. But then one day, for whatever reason, I find myself in a casino. Maybe I went with some friends, maybe I went to a bachelor party, maybe I just decided to go. Whatever the case may be, I went to gamble. And now I'm gambling and I have all this fun and for whatever reason, the time that I'm in that casino, all my problems just fall away. They all just leave. I don't focus on them. I'm not thinking about them. All the plans and the responsibilities and all the stuff that I have to do in my everyday life is just completely gone, just vanishes before my very eyes because I'm focused on the gambling, because I'm having fun, I'm making money, I'm excited. Even if I'm not making money, right? It's still fun. You get to go to a casino, you see all the shiny things, you see the lights, you see all the, beautiful women in the dresses and maybe the handsome dudes in their suits and whatever the case may be, and it's a fun environment and you're ready to make some money and you want to have a good time and you're drinking alcohol, which is even an add-on to that. You're smoking cigarettes and getting more of a buzz or whatever. Okay, so what happens though is I'm relieving this pain, I'm moving towards this pleasure, and I do that, and I do that every weekend for the next 1 month, 2 months, 4 months, 8 months. And before you know it, this is all I really care about. This is all I want. I don't want anything else. My life isn't that great in any other way, right? Basically, this becomes my life. So now, when I realize that this has become a problem, it now is now I'm like, oh well, this is a problem. I got to fix this. Logically, it makes sense. I'm going to move away from it, go towards the pleasure of not gambling, because if I don't gamble, I'll feel better. But then I have to deal with my life, which is not where I want it to be. My receptors are fried. It doesn't feel as good. The things that used to matter to me no longer do. I don't feel as fulfilled with my family or my friends or my career. All that stuff just loses. The interest just gets lost, right? So this is actually where it starts. It starts with pain. It starts with pain, and then it comes into the pleasure. The problem, right? The problem is that gambling addiction is always sort of in the mental health industry anyway, is sort of always considered a horrible thing, an addiction, right? It has a bad context, a bad connotation to it. But here's the thing, guys. Yes, it's an addiction, but it isn't the problem. This is why I think it's interesting, the term problem gambler, right? Or compulsive gambler or gambling addict. These are all very negative contextual words that are assigned to gamblers when they go into this fashion and now they're a gambling addict. Now there's an identity. Okay. Well, hopefully, as you guys listen to my videos, some of this stuff will start to really make sense in terms of how things are clicking and shifting. The identity of being a problem gambler, or the identity of being a gambling addict or compulsive gambler or whatever, that identity, if that identity is there, until that thing goes away, you're probably going to stay a gambler. I can already tell you. The identity is huge. Identity is a huge thing in our subconscious mind. Okay. So, where I'm going with this, though, is that gambling isn't the problem. Gambling is the attempted solution to your problem. The attempted solution. I want you to understand that. It's the attempted solution to the problem. It has nothing to do with money. Okay. Even if you're broke, right? Let's just say at the very beginning you started gambling, and maybe you started gambling because you were broke, right? Because you needed money and you were like, forget it. I'm just gonna start gambling and I'll try to put in $100 a paycheck and just see if I can make any profit, right? Maybe that was the thing. And so you did, and maybe you made some money, and maybe you had all this good experience, right? If you had a horrible experience in those moments, you probably wouldn't get addicted to it just yet. You'd have to continue and continue and continue. But at the very beginning, the very start of you beginning your gambling addiction, even if you were doing it because you were broke, still has nothing to do with the money. Still has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with the emotions underneath being broke. How do you feel when you're broke? Probably pretty bad, right? So you're running away from that feeling of being broke, not the brokenness itself. Okay. So you have to understand that this stuff is emotional, not logical. It's emotional. It's an emotional escape, not a logical escape. It's not about winning a $10,000, $20,000. If you have it in your mind that I have this giant debt that I haven't been able to pay off, and I'm sinking in the ship here, and I need a jackpot, and I've heard this several times from different clients. You know, I've had clients who have hit a jackpot just to literally bet away all of the money on the jackpot and lose it again. So they ended up, I believe, if I remember correctly, they brought in about $70,000. They lost $70,000. They had a jackpot for $100,000. They got that, and then they spent the entire jackpot gambling. Think about that for a second. Just think about that. Like, that is not a logical thing. That is not a logical problem. That is an emotional problem. It's not logical, guys. This is an emotional problem. So if you're a person who's very head-minded, who likes to think a lot, who overthinks a lot, if you're in your head a lot and you're not in your body, you're not in your emotions, it's going to be exceedingly difficult for you to quit gambling because you don't even have access to the emotions, right? First, we have to help you get literate to the emotions. Some people are so shut down that they don't even know what they're feeling. They couldn't even label it. They couldn't locate it. You should be able to label and locate and judge the intensity of that feeling. And you should be able to tell what feelings are what. Okay. Just to give you guys some understanding here, if you're feeling angry and sad and hurt and jealous, you should be able to feel all four of those emotions individually and know where they are in your body. That is a healthy nervous system. That is a healthy understanding of your emotions. If all of that just feels all like a ball, like it's just general, like you don't even know where one feeling begins and then another ends, you can't really understand where it's at in the body, you don't know how to gauge it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst or best it could feel, 0 being nothing, and you can't even gauge it, you don't even know what the feelings are, that is part of your problem. I can promise you that is part of your problem as to how come you're not getting out of gambling. How come the addiction is still there? Because the emotions are shut down. So a lot of people are head-minded. They think a lot. They overthink. They plan. They are rigid. They're strict on what they do. And all of that cognitive rigidity is what we call it. All of that cognitive rigidity is a very big reason as to why you're not quitting gambling. Okay. So it is an emotional problem, not an intellectual one, not a logical one, an emotional one. Your subconscious mind runs on that principle of pain versus pleasure. Now, I want to also put this in here real quick. I hear a lot of gurus talk about discipline and willpower, and they're like, all you need is to, make that decision, decide, use your willpower to never gamble again. Okay, use your decision making, use your willpower, logically analyze it, know what you're doing, and move away. Decide to stop. And any person who is an addict for any reason, whether that's because of sugar, an addiction to sugar, and having a bad weight, and you want to go to the gym, and you want to lose the weight, and you want to be a better person in your body, and these kinds of things, right? It doesn't matter if it's that, all the way to gambling addiction, or cigarettes, or alcohol, or any other substance. Doesn't matter. When you're talking about an addiction, willpower and discipline are important. They are important. I'm not going to say that they're not, but they are not the driving factor. They are not the fuel. The discipline and the willpower are there to help you get over a hump, help you to push through something, to get you past the last hurdle, but they are not what you want to rely on. If you relied on that within a week or 2 weeks or 6 months or a year or however long your willpower lasts, eventually you're going to go right back to exactly where you were because it's going to pass. Okay. You haven't changed your identity yet. You haven't changed your beliefs. You haven't changed your emotions yet. Okay. This is why discipline and willpower don't always work. And it's not actually the thing you want to bet on. If you want to bet on anything, bet on emotional regulation, bet on nervous system regulation, emotional processing. That's what you want to bet on, not discipline and willpower. And I'll give you an example. So logically, it makes sense that I want to, better my life, stop spending all my money on gambling, um, you know, stop making my wife, hurt, be better for my kids, right? Logically, all this stuff makes sense. And I'm going to use my discipline to do it. I'm going to make myself do it through willpower, right? And that can work for a time, and it'll get you over a hump. But if you're using at the start of the race instead of at the end of the race, discipline, discipline, willpower, willpower, discipline, and versus using pain versus pleasure, using motivation, using principles of the subconscious, emotion, belief, identity. Now what happens is you use all of that for fuel. And then at the very hardest part of the thing, now you can use discipline and willpower to break through. So that's kind of how I like to look at it. But the idea is discipline and willpower are finite. Okay, they're finite resources. They're conscious. They're conscious. They're here. They're prefrontal cortex, conscious, logical, prefrontal lobe type things. They're all logical. They're not. They're finite. They're finite resources. Your conscious ability is only so much. I don't want to go too much into subconscious territory and hypnosis and stuff like that, but basically your conscious mind is very limited in the amount of information it can focus on, that it can bring in. Okay, your subconscious mind, on the other hand, billions and billions and billions of pieces of information at any one time. I'll give you an example. You're here, you're listening to me, you're assessing what I'm saying, you're analyzing it, you're logically assessing it. Is it reasonable? Is it BS or not? You're making a decision to listen to me. You're using your willpower to do it, right? You're consciously aware of everything going on. But if I ask you to put your attention to your breath for a moment, you might notice it shift. And the truth is, you've always been aware of your breath, but now you're consciously aware of your breath. If I ask you to put your attention to your feet, you've always been aware of your feet, but now you're consciously aware of your feet. This is the difference, right? You've always been conscious, that you've always been aware that you were breathing, but now you're consciously aware of your breathing, right? There's a difference in awareness. And subconscious just means below conscious awareness, right? So consciously, there's discipline and willpower, and you can direct it, and you can control it, and you can keep it. But at the subconscious level, it's far more subtle. It's again below conscious awareness, and it is far more powerful, far more powerful. It's like a person who's afraid of flying, right? Logically, it's the safest mode of transportation. You can fly with only one engine. If you have a plane with four engines and three engines go down, you can still make it to the ground and perfectly safe with just one engine, right? There's like a little bubble of air that kind of keeps you trapped in, not trapped, that's not the best word, but keeps you safe, we'll say, in the air, right? So you have air going down, air going up, air going to the right, air going to the left, and you are in this little bubble of air protection while you're going through the air. And I know all this stuff because I used to specialize in flying phobias and fears of flying and things like that. But logically, people know this. Like logically, they know they're completely safe. They're in this little air bubble. Pilots talk about it all the time. Only one engine is really needed for them to land safely. It's the safest mode of transportation. Of all the millions of flights and all the millions of passengers on those flights, only roughly 13 to 15 sometimes, well, I guess depending on the year. The average before, I believe, the 2000s was about 15 emergency landings per year out of the millions of flights. 15 emergency landings, and only one or two of those ever ended in an actual crash. And only of those one or two crashes per year did anybody actually die, right? So comparing that to traffic on the street and accidents that happen when you're driving on the highway, it's completely non-comparable. The flying is obviously, logically, rationally the safest mode of transportation, and people know that, but it doesn't matter. They can read these stats all day. It makes no difference. Logically, that makes sense that they should be able to do this, reasonably, it makes sense that they want to be able to fly around and do everything they want to do. They've analyzed their situation. They'd be better off if they could travel, if they could fly places. They're going to make a decision to go fly and use their willpower to do it, but they have belief telling them that something bad might happen. Maybe they're not good enough to fly. Maybe they believe they're going to die. Maybe they have an identity of a person who's just anxious. I'm just this anxious flyer. They have this identity that they've had for a long time. They have a lot of emotional associations, a lot of negative emotional associations, fear, anxiety, sadness, whatever, attached to flying, attached to the TSA, attached to going through the airport, attached to packing their bags, right? All of that is far, so they have all of that, which is far stronger going against their logic, and you have that conscious to subconscious conflict. This is where the problems lie. You have this conscious to subconscious conflict. Logically, I think this, but I feel that. You have all this dissonant energy in your nervous system. And so it's the same thing with gambling. It's the exact same thing, guys. It is literally the same thing. Logically, it makes sense that you want your life to be better. Logically, you don't want to have to break promises anymore, spend your whole paycheck. Logically, you want to be able to buy your own groceries again. Logically, you don't want to have to get loans or handouts just to stay afloat, right? Reasonably, it makes sense. You don't want to lose your whole life just to gamble, right? You've analyzed your situation. If you don't stop now, bad things are going to happen. You're going to make a decision to do it. You're going to use your willpower to stop gambling, and you're going to succeed for a week or two or 6 months or a year or 10. I've seen smokers who they've quit for 10 years, but yet here they are smoking again, 2 packs a day after only 1 week of smoking. Why? Because they never actually got rid of the underlying issues. They just used their discipline and their willpower for the last 10 years. And that's fine, but they didn't address the emotions. They didn't address the identity. They didn't address any of the beliefs. They didn't address anything at the subconscious level. And so the moment something big happened and they decided, they chose to have a cigarette, subconscious mind is like, hey, we stopped at 2 packs a day. If we're smoking again, we're going to get you right back there. And so it does. And so within a few days, that person who quit is now right back on it, right back where they left off at. And the same with gambling. You quit for 6 months because you have all this logical emotional pain, right? Logically, it makes sense that this should be emotionally painful. But again, your receptors are fried, your dopamine is fried, right? And so normal life doesn't feel good anymore. Normal life doesn't feel good anymore. It doesn't feel pleasurable anymore. My wife doesn't make me feel the way she made me feel before. My fulfillment is down, whatever. It doesn't matter, but the idea is life doesn't feel great without gambling anymore. So there's only so much of this pain, which is more painful than this. So only so much of this pain you're going to be able to handle. After so much time, you're going to go right back to gambling. So this is the thing. So another thing about discipline and willpower that I wanted to say is no, I can't remember what it is. um, there is something else about discipline and willpower that is important to understand. I might put that in another video if I remember it. But for now, this seems to be a decently long video. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to learn about gambling addiction at the subconscious level and how we need to work at it from a subconscious place, not just the conscious place. If you guys are interested, subscribe, follow, comment. I like to answer my comments. And I'm here for you guys. If you guys ever want to set things up to get rid of the problem gambling that you might be suffering from, I will be happy to help you with that. Just contact me below, www.gamblingonfreedom.com. And yeah, that's it. All right. Take care for now.